Hi, I'm your host, Larissa Worstiak. Through this podcast, I aim to empower and inspire jewelry entrepreneurs and professionals so they can thrive while adding more beauty to the world. I'm passionate about digital marketing for jewelry brands, and I'm excited to share my passion with you. As we all know, jewelry is joy, so I'll gladly seize any opportunity to talk about it. This is episode 195, and today I'm going to be sharing my interview with a knowledgeable, passionate, and vibrant woman who has been partnering with top tier corporate executives and entrepreneurs to develop their personal and professional brands for more than 20 years, with an emphasis on the gem and jewelry industry since 2013. She also specializes in a very interesting niche of the jewelry industry, supporting jewelers who make proprietary and branded products, specifically proprietary diamond cuts. Through her branding expertise and her post purchase navigating training program, she helps jewelers protect their brand valuation post purchase. More on her in just a little bit, but here's a preview of what we'll be covering: the role that brand storytelling plays in marketing, especially for a unique and or proprietary product, what the jewelry industry needs more of, why and how jewelry brands should care about post-purchase valuation, as well as the customer experience overall, and more. But before we get to the solid gold of this episode, I'd like to take a moment to remind you that this podcast has both an audio and video component. So you can either listen on your favorite podcast platform or watch on YouTube by searching Joy Joya. I love creating this content as my act of service to you, my awesome listeners and viewers. And you can support the podcast for free by taking the time not only to subscribe, but also to leave a rating and review on Apple Podcasts, which helps other jewelry dreamers find it too. I want to read my favorite review of the week. Debbie and Co says, quote, "This podcast is a must for all jewelers. Larissa provides so much value with actionable tips and relevant interviews. I love that each episode starts with a recap of three important articles related to jewelry marketing. This alone is so helpful to me as I grow my business. If you're in the jewelry industry and you aren't listening to this podcast, now is the time." End quote. Thank you. I really appreciate that. If you leave a review, I might read it on a future episode. So please let me know what you think about this episode or any other major takeaways you've had recently. I'm so excited to announce that the Joy Joya podcast has its very first sponsor. After self-funding this podcast since 2018 when I launched it, I've now decided to seek outside sponsors to help me build the resources I'll need to keep improving upon this podcast and making it better for you. I have big ideas for this podcast, and those require funds and support. So if you're interested in being a Joy Joya podcast sponsor and seeing the sales kit to reach a more dedicated niche audience of jewelry business owners and leaders than you might be getting from other advertising venues, please email me Larissa, that's Laryssa at joyjoya.com. So this episode is sponsored by Chrismella, maker of the most secure earring back in the world. If you're not watching on YouTube, please visit the Joy Joya channel to see my demo of the only earring back that automatically fits, locks, and lifts all types of earrings. So I just want to show you the really beautiful and luxe packaging that if you are a wholesale partner of Chrismella, this is what you would be sharing with your customers. And I also have a little demo stud earring set here with the earring back on it. So I just want to show you how amazingly this won't come off. I can even ruin this earring stand, and these earring backs are not coming off. They're pretty awesome. Have you been seeking unique gift with purchase ideas for your jewelry business, especially with the upcoming holidays? Are you hoping to increase your average order value? For any jewelry business that sells post earrings, Chrismella is a high quality solution that enables you to provide a better customer experience and instills confidence in your clientele. Mayumi Ishii, the exclusive US distributor of Chrismella, was even a past guest on the Joy Joya podcast in episode 71 if you'd like to check out her interview. Joy Joya listeners and viewers who are interested in learning more about partnering with Chrismella can email Mayumi at info@chrysme.la. Chrismella offers white labeling as well as wholesale opportunities. That's info@chrisme.la. And please make sure to mention that you learned about Chrismella through the Joy Joya podcast. In this segment of the podcast, I give out my Sparkle Award for the week. During this segment, I highlight a jewelry brand that's impressing me with their marketing. The Sparkle Award is also interactive, so you can visit sparkleaward.com to nominate a jewelry brand that's inspiring you these days, and I might feature your submission on a future podcast episode. So this Sparkle Award goes to Swarovski, and I found out about a new campaign they're doing from an article in Adweek, which I'll link in the show notes. So I recently saw this article about the brand, and I was super impressed by their unique approach to storytelling on social media. They've recently partnered with English actress Amy Lou Wood to create a video-based marketing campaign that helps consumers, quote, recognize and express what is right for them as they aim for better, end quote. So in this little video series that's really cute and fun, Amy finds herself all dressed up when suddenly her companion cancels the plan at the last minute and she suddenly has free time to do whatever she likes. And it's really cute. She kind of has this moment of self-care, of having time with herself, and she keeps repeating the phrase note to self and reminding herself of things that she should be doing, like napping for exactly 17 minutes because that's the optimal time to nap, meditating, editing her wardrobe. And then as she's having these thoughts, actually showing the more real, imperfect side of herself. She's dancing, oversleeping, indulging in her love for fashion. It's really cute and relatable and shows that everyone is imperfect and that sometimes having a little bit of fun with life is more important than just being perfect all the time. It also tells the story of a brand that's really made for real women who are perfectly imperfect and embracing just what makes them happy. The videos will be distributed through the brand and through the actress's social media channels. I thought it was really cute and unique and a fun approach to brand storytelling. As I mentioned, you can visit sparkleaward.com to nominate a jewelry brand that's inspiring you these days, and I might feature your submission on a future podcast episode. Let's discuss some recent news related to jewelry or marketing. Each week, I share my thoughts about 3 relevant articles, and you can get the links to these articles by checking out the show notes. The first article comes from martech.org, and it's called The Only Two Things That Matter in Marketing. I love this. There's only 2 things. Very cool. So, business owners and leaders tend to get really overwhelmed by marketing because there are so many things you feel you should be doing. It gets complicated. You have FOMO. You feel like you're just missing the one thing that's going to change and grow your business. There's so many technologies, tools, and tactics that promise to be the ultimate savior and the next best thing. But this recent article from Martech really simplifies marketing down to the essential elements. I love that. Here's a great quote from the article. Quote, most people think of marketing simply as a creative endeavor. After all, the visual and written components that are the cornerstone of all marketing collateral are creative work. However, marketing is more of a process than it is a creative effort. End quote. So, what are these 2 essential things that will help you simplify your marketing and make it less about just the creativity and the guessing game of it all? These things are experimentation and optimization. In marketing, you always need to be trying new things so that you can really find out what works for your brand. But you can't just keep trying new things willy nilly and like throwing darts at the wall and hoping something sticks. You also need to have a way to measure your experiments and then implement an optimization process as well. So you can keep moving forward and optimizing the things that are working. And this is the most important, quickly letting go of things that aren't working. So I think this article really poses an important question. And this is another quote that I think sums it up really well. How many experiments are you running every month? How much time and resources do you spend on optimizing your marketing versus creating and launching new efforts? Both experimentation and optimization are essential. End quote. The next article comes from Retail Brew, and it's LVMH America's CTO on the bold connection strategy that will define luxury retail. So, Antoine Tessier is the VP and CTO at LVMH Americas. He's been working in luxury retail for 17 years, and he's pretty much seen it all, according to this article. So, he thinks that connection, just that one word, one concept is the key pillar to the future of both luxury and retail. And connection has only been heightened with technologies like virtual and augmented reality, which really grew more popular during the pandemic when people couldn't go to stores, when they had to really depend on e commerce to do their shopping. Even things like Web3 and the metaverse has kind of started to catch on with some of the biggest luxury trends because it kind of provides this new method of connection and immersion. And he sees that as a trend that doesn't seem to be dying down. So the luxury customer and that luxury customer's needs remain the same, but they are becoming a bit more acquainted with new technologies and they see the concept of connection as expanding. So it's not just in store with the salesperson, but in all of these other ways. Another really great and important quote from this article. Quote, while customers flocking to Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok have proven their appetite for video based content, luxury brands that want to stay relevant to customers will need to invest in technology, end quote. I mean, that's kind of like full stop that's everything. I think the jewelry brand, especially at the higher end, need to be thinking about technology and how technology can facilitate connection even further. And the last article comes from The Street, and it's called Pandora CEO Talks Affordable Luxury and the Price of Silver. So, Pandora CEO Alexander Lasik recently spoke to The Street about everything from jewelry demand to the price of silver. As we all know, you listeners and viewers of the podcast, jewelry is a discretionary purchase, meaning nobody needs to have jewelry. And in any discretionary category, it's truly up to the jewelry brand or any brand in this category to convince the consumers that you have something interesting, something worth paying attention to. That was true throughout the pandemic, before the pandemic, and now. You can't just sit back and assume that people do want to buy, that people aren't buying right now. You have to continue telling that interesting story. So CEO Lasik said that a lot of analysts have told Pandora to close their stores and go online only. But here's the thing I found the most interesting about this article. Lasik really knows the Pandora customer. He says, quote, "We could have, but it's a really bad idea. 60% of my customers are guys who are buying jewelry, and I'm sorry, but they need the help," end quote. So even though these analysts are recommending to Pandora to take a certain action, Pandora is actually fully tuned in to who their target customer is, and they're not going to make decisions that jeopardize the relationship they have with the target customer. Pandora has kind of smaller boutique size stores. They don't have a lot of inventory stocked in the stores, but really what LASIK understands about his customers is that people are looking for the experience. They want to interact with the salespeople. They want the guidance to make the purchase. So that ultimately is really important. And it's the thing that they're going to keep pushing in the storytelling and continue to make decisions based on that knowledge. So I love that kind of being directed by the target customer. And I love how that is reflected and communicated in this interview. So, for more information about any of these articles, check out the links provided in the show notes. Without further delay, I'd love to share with you my guest. I first met Tammy Cohen at this year's AGS Conclave event in Oklahoma City, and I was immediately captivated by her warm and encouraging energy. She's a true extrovert and people person, and she's a vocal supporter of other women in business. Her passion for the jewelry industry just radiates off of her. As I mentioned in the episode intro, she's partnered with top tier corporate execs and entrepreneurs to develop their personal and professional brands for more than 20 years, with an emphasis on the gem and jewelry industry since 2013. Her business, TC Brand Consulting, utilizes dynamic brand positioning, novel educational programs, and critical industry partnerships to grow brand sales exponentially. She also sees opportunities for women to thrive and grow exponentially and founded a women's business network called Women Beyond the Table. Let's chat with Tammy. So what's exciting to you about the industry right now? What is like getting you like riled up? What are you looking out there that's fun?
No, I'm just like so excited that, I mean, everybody I speak to, their business is, how to quote it, insane. They're just doing a lot of business and it's still happening. And even with, these predictions of the inflation's going up and we haven't even started to see the recession and it's going to be a shit show and it's going to be crazy and gas and this and that, there's still this optimism. And, I think it's also what's exciting are that after the last 2 years, where people were kind of like in a lockdown mode and which they're really kind of moving away from, I think this will be a great year to celebrate even more because people will be able to be together, even though travel is... I just got back from being 2 weeks overseas, and if you take out flying and airports and luggage delays, it's amazing. Once you get somewhere, it's fantastic.
Yeah, the airport part, maybe not so much.
Oh my God. I don't even want to tell you, like, flight cancellations and sleeping in Madrid in the airport and crazy stuff. But yeah, you have no idea. But you know what? I just feel like the industry seems to, with all of the challenges that are going on and with the continued situation with Russia and Ukraine and the restrictions on rough and all kinds of things that are coming on, people are still wanting to celebrate and wanting to, mark, buy a piece of jewelry because it means something to them. So I think that's really exciting. And I think the hybrid nature now of in-store and digital is a beautiful thing. Because, for a while there, it was like digital. And you see the stores are, coming back and people still want to go in and have that in-person experience. And how I like seeing the jewelry industry responsive instead of being the traditional mindset of, we're not doing any of that. So they really got on board with the digital end of things and really taking it to the next level, but also the in-person in-store and how the sales staff and how all the staffs are like coming together and they're bringing technology, not just for technology's sake, but because the technology will actually help the customer and help them do their jobs better. I think the jewelry industry is investing more in people. And I think that they're starting to understand that messaging is really important, but also understanding what their customers want and making it simple for their customers. I don't think that was a thought before. I think the old guard was more about maximizing numbers, and the new guard is not about maximizing numbers. Of course, you have to look, you have to make sales, but it's a much bigger picture. There's so much more in the story. And I'm also getting excited about the metaverse
Yeah.
because I've been listening to a couple of webinars there, and I think it's really interesting and cool. I've been taking time trying to understand that because I'm of a different generation, and I speak to my kids about NFTs. They're just like, duh, and I'm just like, what? Still don't get it. But at the end of the day, I think I like seeing that our industry is moving forward instead of always being so traditional and stuck, in a decade or something.
It's really true. So much positivity there. I feel already inspired by all the things that you said and excited. So tell
Yeah,
our
I'm trying to. I think positivity is where it's at because the more you put out positivity, it changes the energy, and energy is everywhere. It's a living thing.
Absolutely. So tell our listeners and viewers, give them some background information. How did you get into the jewelry industry and how has your path evolved over time? Let's hear it.
Well, most people don't realize this. When all through high school, when I started at age 15, I think the rules were different back then. In the 70s, my first real job was in a jewelry retailer store, and that was in the Five Towns. And the big store back then was Marvin and Sons, and it was the store in the Five Towns. And my mother at the time worked there. She was the head of appraisals and the estate division, and she had gone to the GIA, and I went to that store. I started working after school, and I went every day, and I worked late Wednesday nights and all day Sunday and Saturday. And it was closed Sunday. I worked all day Saturday, and I loved it. I said, wow, this is so cool. And when I think back on it, that store was interesting because although it was family run and it was family owned and it was basically the whole family was involved with it, each department was run by a woman. And that was very unusual in the
That's
70s.
cool.
So you had these these women on the floor, especially the old time salesperson. It was always a well put together woman from the Five Towns who knew her stuff. They knew how to negotiate. And these customers would come and only want to work with their salesperson. They had these relationships. There was no social media. There was no cell phones. There was no internet. There was nothing. It was all about relationships. And the store was busy all the time. People would come in, they didn't care. And they would come in and spend hours because they hung out with their trusted advisor. And whether it was giftware, whether it was the luxury side, whether it was like the center, were all of like the gold, we sold gold pieces and chains and all kinds of things and watch brands. And there was a stringing department, the repair department, even gift wrapping. I mean, anything you could think of was woman run. And these women ran a tight ship. And I learned so much. And when I look back on it, I was so fortunate because I was rotated. Because I was so young, I was rotated to every department. And I worked even into my freshman year of college, I was working there. It was years. I even worked in in the operations in the basement, in customer service, answering the phones, selling on the floor. I became a stringer. I had to learn how to string pearls and beads.
Cool.
I sold watches. I sold luxury. I sold anything. I had to work behind the repair counter. I learned a lot. I even went to gift wrap. I wasn't good in gift wrap, though. I could not wrap the boxes well. I went into giftware. It was like, I wouldn't even expect that anybody would do these kind of things today. And the store doesn't exist anymore because the neighborhood changed so much. The Five Towns really changed, and anybody who was not a Sabbath Observer store or open on Saturdays and closed on Sundays, they just lost out, and they didn't recognize that their customer changed. Mm-hmm. That was one of the things that I learned. But for me, I was in college, and then I went for an MBA after college, and I came out and I said, hey, I really my MBA was in marketing management, and I had been in the garment center in fashion, and I was working in my family business, which was sweater production, traveling around the country and working with accounts and doing their sweater programs. And I decided, I really want to go out and open up my own consulting firm, and I want to help small businesses with their marketing. And Hotsclots, somewhere in there, I was working with different companies. I wound up working with small jewelry businesses. And it all kind of came back, and I wound up getting a client that was a really big player, a site holder. They were global, and I then just like focused on them for years because they had this very cool proprietary cut, and I was learning a lot about that, and it kind of took me into a whole new place. So I was always working on the branding side, but then I got into the post-purchase valuation side while working with that client. So that's pretty much my journey of how I came here. But, COVID, of course, changed a lot of things up for me and took me to another place within my business. So it's a little different than what it was 3 years ago. It's actually a lot different, but that's pretty much my journey.
Oh, that's really cool and interesting. So what is the focus of your consulting business now? How are you like setting yourself apart in the marketplace?
Well, I'll tell you what I learned during COVID
Okay.
after, hiring a business coach and hiring a life coach and doing this personal growth and Mind Valley and Tony Robbins and Lifebook and just changing every area of my life. I'm learning how to have a healthy lifestyle and how to think differently and how to change my mindset and limiting beliefs. I realized that I can't continually, make a choice of putting my cookies in one basket or my eggs in one basket, as they say. I realized I had to expand myself. I had to get out there. I had gotten very comfortable in a niche, and I was good at it, and I still am good at it, but I realized I really have to expand myself. So during COVID, I really went out there and went from a sole proprietorship to an LLC and opened up a website and opened up social media and did things I was not doing at all before because I was very busy traveling and I was very comfortable. And it was really quite a big discovery time, and I was exploring different things. And I realized that I love brand messaging. Like, branding is a huge continuum, but I love telling the story. And I feel that that's something in our industry that still needs some work, because I look at it, the industry is getting much better with it, but I'm still speaking with clients who are like, can you fix my website? Can you help me with my social media? And I'm like, whoa, like I'm looking at your website and your social media, but it's not about fixing these things. It's not about changing your visuals or giving you a marketing idea. It's about what your messaging is so all over the place and what you're saying. And I think now the difference is that we're at a point where we have to be able to understand and explain what is our mission statement? What are our core values? What is our vision? Once you got that down, and once you understand who you are and what your ethics are and what's important, everything else comes into place. Any graphic designer can work with somebody, with a company, with a brand that is clear about who they are and clear about who their audience is. That's what I think is still taking time for our industry to understand, and then also following it through, like going straight across all of the channels. And I got very into a niche of post-purchase valuation, which I think is what separates me, because I'll take the brand from the message, but the key is once you sell, do you hold your value? Because lots of appraisers out there, they understand, especially the credential ones, of how to do valuation, but are you truly branded? Are you truly communicating the right messaging that you can set your value, and that value will be placed, because that appraiser will contact you for value? And that's where there was always disconnect. And I always found it amazing that nobody was addressing it, because most appraisers would just use an industry price list and value something, because everything that was done through retail or custom work, it was never branded. It was just done, oh, here's a custom piece, so we're gonna price this generically, and we're gonna value it generically. And that to me was where there was kind of like misalignment. So that's what makes me unique. Like, that's where my focus is on the messaging side and on taking that value and making sure that customer, when they go to get their piece of praise, is valued correctly, because that can kill a sale in 2 seconds and undervalue.
Yeah.
And it does. all the time. I see it happen so many times.
It's so interesting. And I can really relate to what you said about the brand messaging. I know, and kind of like taking it back a few steps and going back to like the foundation of the brand. I know a lot of like clients or brands, when they approach me, they're like, I need help with this, this, and this. But really, it's like we need to take it back a few steps and go back to the true like foundation of your messaging, of your business. And that can be a really hard pill to
Exactly.
swallow for a lot of people, because you have to tear down a little bit what you've built and get back to the core of it. But I think in the long run, it's worth it.
Absolutely. And it has to be the truth. Like I've worked with companies and I've seen where they're like, okay, I have a logo and I have colors and and I'm a brand. And I'm like, you're not a brand. And they're just, what do you mean? And they're kind of like talking about, and then they're like, okay, I'm going to do some social responsibility. I'm going to support this. Listen, I'm socially responsible. I'm like, you're not. Like, it's not, you're not, you can't just like pick and choose what you want and then, okay, I'm this is what I am. This is who I am. You have to have like, there has to be a platform, and there has to, like you said, a foundation of consistency, of truth, because you can't pull the wool over people's eyes. It's just, people are savvy, and it's just not the right thing to do. And somebody said something to me in this industry, and he's a mentor of mine. He's a really great guy, and he said to me, after being in the industry 30 years, he goes, I'm at the point where I only want to work with good people. And I said, wow, yeah, I only want to work with good people. And I'm also of that age. I haven't been in this industry as long. I was in other industries, but you get to the point where you're like, you know what? I'd rather walk away from something than walk into something where it's not truth. It's something else, and unfortunately you see it sometimes, and you have to like walk away. And it's not easy, because who wants to walk away from pay or whatever, or a job, but you also have to live with yourself. So that's been important to me.
Yeah. So who is the target customer that you enjoy working with the most? What's your sweet spot with that?
Well, I love the artisan, the craftsman, the bench jeweler. I love these people who've been producing and supplying the industry for 30 years, for years. And their work is stellar. Their quality is beautiful. And their story is amazing of how they learned and how they've been working so diligently. But nobody knows who they are.
Yeah.
The people in the industry will know, like the big brand they're supplying, the retailer they're supplying knows their name, but the client doesn't. Like the end customer, the end consumer. And I think, like, I like to see these people start going D2C and being able to build their own brands, because they've been doing it for so long, and they've done it for other people. They've just been supplying so much of them. So they've always been my niche. I always resonate with them, and I respect the work that they do. So I try to align myself with people who are producing quality and people who take a lot of care in what they're putting out. I'm not a mass girl, although I'm not saying mass merchants don't have quality, but I always tend to gravitate towards those high-end suppliers, because I love the way they work, and I love the attention to detail and what's important to them. And that's who my client tends to be. But I find also now it's very interesting that I'm having conversations with larger clients who are thinking, wow, this whole post-purchase thing is very interesting. They've developed brands, and they're like, nobody's talking to me about that. That's different. So it's like two different things are going on right now, and I find both of them fascinating.
Yeah. You touched very much earlier about the proprietary diamond cut aspect and how you've worked with that, and especially in post-purchase valuation. It's like such a specific niche in this industry, and it's super fascinating to me.
Mm-hmm.
Can you tell me more about how you got involved with proprietary diamond cuts, and what's the potential with the post-purchase valuation?
Well, it's very interesting. So when I was working with the site holder, and they had put out they didn't develop it. They didn't develop this cut. It was developed by another site holder, but they took it on. They took the inventory. It was patented, and it was fascinating. It just fascinated me, because this cut was so radically different than anything I'd ever seen. And it had a lot of challenges because, back then, the industry just was like, what's this? And I just had to come in there and learn. And I spent so much time like talking to the master cutter, speaking with the grading laboratories, watching the studies, getting involved with it. And I'm very much into light. I'm a person of light. I believe light is everywhere. Light is just, it's so important. And one thing that diamonds do, it's mathematics. It's moving light. Okay, that's what these facets are supposed to do. They're supposed to move light. And I just fell in love with the whole intricacy of it. And because I worked on a product, I was lucky in the fact, and I say this to this day, I was lucky that I came in on a product that had challenges. Because when you have challenges, you have to think out of the box and you have to like figure out how to make it work. When you go into a company and you start working with a Tiffany or a Cartier or, one of these major, amazing brands, you have a lot of resources at your fingertips. Plus, you also have an audience that's open because the marketing and the branding and it's years and it's there. When you walk into something that's not known and the resources aren't necessarily there, you kind of have to really learn and think. And I have to admit that one of the best things that I ever did was just reach out to American Gem Society Laboratories. They are an amazing, amazing, amazing group, and they did all the studies, the light performance studies. They're the ones who study proprietary cuts, and I learned so much listening to them, Jason Quick, and just listen to how they think and how they look at things. So for me, it was a big learning process. And I said, wow, I love this. I love learning about proprietary cuts. And I kind of became the proprietary cut person. Like I went to all of the conferences, the gemological conferences. I attended all the appraisal conferences. And I had to talk about this cut that had all of these challenges. And you know what? They started accepting because I was able to show them that the claim is true. How this diamond sparkles and how it's different than any other cut and what it does and I was always very straightforward about what it does and what it doesn't do. And that at the end of the day, it's proprietary, it's patented, it's a trademark product. I started learning these terms and what they mean. And I started understanding use path and how you have to support a branded, proprietary, patented product. It's different. So once I got the gemological world and the appraisers to start understanding this, I just, took it to the next level. And I started building like a whole valuation program for this particular cut. And I learned a lot. And what happened was over time, I started loving the whole story of natural diamonds and how a diamond comes out of the ground and how it gets cut and how it gets found and how it gets cut. And it's sitting there billions of years, millions of years, and then here it is, and it's going to be cut and how it's cut. And I went to Africa and I went to the cut polish facilities, and it just was fascinating to me. Anything about diamonds is fascinating. And, I'm a natural diamond girl, you could tell. I mean, I love that. And it's always something that resonates to me. But I do get lab grown and I do get the market for that. I understand that it exists. But for me, it's, working with these master genius cutters who just know how to put together, no faceting, know the angles, the measurements, proportions that make light and make light travel inside a stone. It's just a story unto itself. And I'll tell you what one of the master cutters said to me. He said, diamonds, remember this, diamonds are marketed on love and legacy and celebration and all kinds of things. It's emotional. But a well-cut diamond's mathematics. And every cutter I've ever worked with, and including the laboratories I've worked with, these are mathematicians. They're not computer guys, they're not software people, they're mathematicians. Because those angles and those measurements are where it's at, and that's math. So that was a big learning thing for me. And as a student who never did well in math and who would sit and listen to their angle measurement discussions and be like, wait, what are you talking about? It's fascinating. It's a story in itself.
That's so cool. So, speaking, kind of building upon what you said about the love and emotion part of it, obviously that's what most consumers would connect with because I mean, they
Right.
might be interested in the math part, especially if that's like something that's a natural inclination for them. But what role does brand storytelling play in like kind of selling that magic and romance of those cuts to the end consumer?
Well, it's very interesting you said that because one of the things I had to do, amongst all my other tasks, was train. I had to go and train the staff on how to speak about it, and I also found myself speaking directly to customers. I was in many videos that were played, in markets that the diamond was sold in, talking to customers and explaining the process. And you know what? I found that the customers want to know what's under the hood. They want to know what makes it different. They want to understand, like, why is this different and what does it mean? Now, one of the things I did was it was recommended to me by another mentor of mine who's a master valuer in the industry, and she's also a journalist. She's an author. She's writes columns in all of our industry publications, and she said, we have to develop. What you'd be smart to do is to develop a scope that shows what this diamond does with light. Okay, and she introduced me to a scope manufacturer, a precision gemological scope manufacturer out in LA. And like I did with AGS, I sent some stones over, and he was like, "Wow, this is a really cool stone. It's like there's so much light. It's like the galaxy, it's stars." And I'm like, "I want you to create the scope that can show this at different light angles and measurements." And he was like, "Yep." So he worked on it, and he developed a scope. And once the customer had that scope and was able to look in and watch, literally, it was a simple concept of light hitting the tops of two different diamonds. One was the proprietary cut, and the other diamond was any diamond they wanted to choose in the store, including their own jewelry. We didn't say, "Oh, it has to be this or that." Choose whatever you want. As a matter of fact, I would say, choose something better color, better clarity. Choose whatever stone you want. Let's put it together in the light. Let's look at light. And because the scope was able to adjust lighting measurements, so you could go from any light angle. Or, remember, people sit in restaurants, it's darker. People go to a club, it's darker. People be outside in the light. So there's different lighting environments. We let them manipulate them all, and they see with their eyes what the proprietary cut did and how it bounced and how it was going crazy and sparkling, and they get it. They were like, "I get it." And then we would talk about legacy and giving something different, giving something that has a different meaning, and it was very effective too, because the shape of the stone was so different from a round brilliant. We would actually say, okay, we put some round brilliant diamonds, we put branded round brilliant cuts, and then we put like 3 of them down. I'm not going to name names, and then we put the proprietary cut, and we'd say which one is which one is which, and they immediately knew which one was a proprietary cut, because they couldn't tell you which one was this, which one was that on the round brilliants. They all looked the same. But they knew exactly which one was a different cut because it looked different, even though it was a round shape also. So I had a way of like sharing science and treating the guests, not just like, let's just talk about love and all that, which is really important in emotion, but let's educate. Because you know what? They wanted to know what made it different. How is this blueprint different? How is the amount of facets? What does it mean? How does the light travel through? How does it produce this sparkle? They got caught up in that story. And then of course, it was beautiful, and they wanted something different. And they wanted to be able to show their friends how in the dark it sparkled. And we gave them a lot of tools, a lot of great things that they could bring home so they could show their friends exactly why their diamond's different, because it looked different physically and it performed differently than other round brilliants in the market, and it was a round shape. So that was one of the things that I realized, is that you have to, like, when you speak to the customer, you have to give them education and also emotion. And you can't just like not bother. You also have to listen to your customer. Listen, sometimes customer just wants something pretty and they don't want to hear it, of course, but for me, I always like giving the extra education. And I found that when I gave it to the staff, they were able to list the attributes. It didn't become a conversation about price. This diamond costs way more than a generic round brilliant, okay? We never discussed the price. We talked about the attributes, what makes it different. And people want different.
That's so fascinating. And not just the education part, but really what you described was like the interactivity of the customer experience, like letting them see it, touch it, compare, and like actually inviting them into this thing that might only be reserved for like gemologists typically, like giving them kind of like a peek behind the curtain in a way. And I really love that as well.
Yeah, they really loved, the scope, and we started also bringing in other kinds of microscopes where they can see we had the diamonds inscribed with a serial number and a logo, and then they could see the light moving through. Also, like we try to keep it as interactive for them as possible, so that they really felt, like you said, like they were scientists or they were gemologists and and that's really what built it. But for us, it was always talking about the difference. It was always about like you're getting something different and unique, and that's where it was for them, and proving it and showing it to them. So I think that was how. That's for me what it is about proprietary cuts. I always find what's different about them. I always see what's different about them, and I try to make it, like this is different, and people like different. Like I said, that, branding is really happening more and more in our industry because brands can communicate a difference. And if you can communicate your attributes better than the next person, you're going to have your audience is going to listen.
So true. And there's a lot of same in this industry too. So if you actually do have something different, making that a strong point, I think is very important. So
I agree.
Tammy, so you also work with a global network of appraisers, and you're an advocate of brand storytelling for, like we said, the post-purchase valuation. What's your relationship to the appraiser group in the part of the industry? How does that play a role into all of this?
Wow, appraisers to me are, they're like the salt of the earth. First of all, I had to learn a lot about appraising, because there's a big difference between a GJ, a graduate gemologist, and an appraiser, and customers don't know the difference. They don't understand that a graduate gemologist is not an appraiser. Because a graduate gemologist is taught how to identify a stone. That's what they're taught how to do. They're not taught valuation. It depends on the gemology school if they're offering that coursework, and that has a different designation and different initials after the name than GJ. I always would say, customers would say to me, "Oh, I went to the appraiser and he's a GIA GG," and I'd be like, "That's great, but GIA does not teach valuation." So you need to speak with somebody. I would call them credentialed. What's a credentialed appraiser? What's an accredited appraiser? That's somebody who they are GJ, whatever gemological school they've gone to, and then they continue the process of learning valuation. They go through rigorous testing. They go through certification. They have to redo their certifications, and they're given a different designation from GJ. And, you want to see, it's like the specialist, you want to see a credentialed appraiser who follows USPAP, who understands the guidelines of the industry, who's a member of an appraisal organization, so that they get up-to-date information constantly, and they are taking their certification regularly. They're recertifying. So it's very important. And I personally once I started understanding it, I kind of became like the appraiser whisperer. I was going to all their conferences and talking to them, and I was like, okay, I need to explain to the staff. I need to train brands, the staff. I need to train everybody on what is the difference between an appraiser and a graduate gemologist, and why it's important to see a credentialed appraiser. And, I started learning and teaching these kind of, analogy stories. Like I would talk about, you're building a building. in the middle of a city, right? And you're the architect and you're the head of construction and you're building this big, you know every beam in that building, you know every piece of information about that building. The architect, this is amazing. You're in charge of that building and you know everything about that building. You can identify anything in that building. However, the bank, who are they going to for evaluation? Are they talking to the head of construction? Are they talking to the architect? Are they talking to the project manager? No, they're going to the real estate appraiser. That's who they're going to for evaluation. It's no different in our industry. You want to go to a specialist. If you have a heart problem, I say, are you going to go to your primary care physician? Or are you going to go to a cardiologist? Like, who are you talking to? So you want to make sure you're going to the best. And one of the things I started doing with the appraisers, because I was going globally to all the appraiser conferences and their meetings, I started referring credentialed appraisers to customers, okay, because I made it easy. Where does a customer live? I made sure that I could match them, get them to an appraiser that's within range of where they live to make it easy. So it's another organic service. So what happens is that customer doesn't have to think like, I have to find an appraiser, who am I going to find? Because you know what they're going to do? They're going to go local to a local jeweler who's not necessarily selling that proprietary stone that they purchased and might not know what it is, and they might bring out Jerry the appraiser, Norm the appraiser from the back office, and he'll be like, oh my gosh, he'll value it based on a generic price list. Mm-hmm. And then boom, that customer has an undervalue. And then they're telling them, but we can definitely give you something that's better, that's bigger, that's this, at a better price. I've seen it happen so many times. And it's really because the customer didn't know where to go, And I'm not saying that there aren't very credentialed appraisers affiliated with jewelry stores. There are. And I'm not saying that there aren't, GGs that don't reach out because they understand, I don't know what this is. I have to reach out. I have to find out what this is. So I'm just saying in general, like as a brand, it's your responsibility to make sure your customer has the best experience and not just to reach them post-purchase with a birthday card or a holiday card or an anniversary card, but to hold their hand and tell them, I'm going to help you. I'm going to find the most experienced, most credentialed appraiser that it'll be easy for you to get to. And here's a list of questions you should ask the appraiser. And here's what you should know when you go for an appraisal. And, once that happens, you just taken a lot of the time and a lot of the anxiety because people want to get their pieces appraised. They have to insure them. And not every person is going with necessarily the jewelry insurance that's out there. They might be going with their own homeowner's insurance. So we have to make sure that people can get their pieces appraised and get insured because that's their piece. They don't want it lost or stolen and be out of pocket. So that's like one of the chains that I saw as very important. And I really got in with the appraisal industry because I was educating, instead of the organizations doing it, I was educating customers about the importance of visiting a credentialed appraiser.
Yeah. It's all about the customer experience, Tammy, right?
It's all about the customer. And the more information you give them, the more you help them, the more they trust you. And the more you make their lives easier and you take out anything that would make it hard, the more they want to come back because you made their lives easier. And that's what we're here to do. We're here to serve.
So true.
I don't want them to try to figure it out. Like there's no reason for them to like go crazy and figure it out and then get hurt. So I've seen people buy something and love it, then an undervalue and they hate it. And they're devastated. And you just lost all the trust.
It makes
a lot of sense. For it.
Yeah. So in addition to serving customers better, making their lives easier, what else do you think the jewelry industry needs more of?
That's a good question. I would have said transparency, but I feel like that's really coming full circle now. I think that transparency is definitely something that's happening. I think the jewelers are looking to share their story and provide origin reporting and traceability and make it a priority to have all this ready for the customer so the customer doesn't have to ask like now they're coming to the point where they're like, you know what, we want to provide this information. We want to make sure we want to make sure that we know where our stones are coming from. We want to be as transparent as possible. I see that as a big shift. I remember when I was at Conclave and Marcus Leonis was speaking, and I was thinking, wow, he's talking about 47th Street, like a lot of the pushing and the way just, pushing a sale and pushing a sale. And I think that most of the industry is now walking away from that. I think it's not about maximizing numbers. It's not about pushing people, selling them what you need to get rid of in your inventory. It's about listening. And I see that listening to the customer, giving them what they want. I see, companies that are saying, okay, mining companies that are saying to their site holders, what do you need? What rough will work best for your needs and your customer? Like I see more of this openness and this wanting to do good and to make sure that the customer is protected, but also that everybody's buying that it's not being pushed, that it's being done in the right way. And I think it goes back to ethics. And I feel like our industry is really taking on a firm ethical stand today. And that 47th Street mentality from the past is kind of shrinking a lot.
That's really encouraging and positive to hear. I love that. So what else would you like to share about your business and work, Tammy? I'd love to hear what else you have going on. Let's hear it.
Well, one of the things that really lights me up, besides talking about this business and just reading and breathing in everything that's going on and talking to clients and talking just with colleagues and kind of finding out things that are going on. I love to read, and I read the publications. I started a business network for women, and this is really what's lighting me up. And we have quite a few people in it from the gem and jewelry industry. It's interesting, but it's a global network. It's now a year and a half that we've been in existence. It's called Women Beyond the Table. And I really feel like it's my dharma. I feel like this is kind of where my path has been moving to. What happened was during COVID, when I was rethinking my business and understanding that I need to change things and I need to work harder and get new clients and open myself up and step into my power and, create a website, create other things and start getting out there. I was like, wow, wouldn't it be great if I just had a network of people I can trust for services? Because you know what? Copywriter, this, that, whatever I need. I was just thinking, I'm Googling and I'm coming up with things and it's 10,000 people hits. And then you hit one person and you look at their website and what they do. And all of a sudden you have 10 days of automations because you downloaded one thing that you were reading, And I said, wouldn't it be nice just to have women who would providing services? So I spoke with a couple of colleagues who are friends, because I'm fortunate in that most of my colleagues are my friends, and they were like, I go, yeah, I think this would be. They go, that's a great idea. You should do it. And I just feel like, yeah, this is what I want to do. I love it. And we have, like I said, we have gem and jewelry people in the group too. So it's really fun. It's nice. It's a good group.
That's amazing. I love that. Well, Tammy, this has been awesome. I love learning more about you and sharing you with my listeners and viewers. Tell them where they can find you if they want to connect and learn more.
Sure. Okay. So you can find me very easily on Instagram, TC Brand Consulting. That's T as in Tom, C as in cat, Brand Consulting. I'm also on LinkedIn, Tammy Cohen, which is TC Brand Consulting. You can always Facebook too, TC Brand Consulting. And I have a website, which is www.tcbrandconsulting.com. And you can reach me at Tammy at tcbrandconsulting.com too. So I think that's all of my contact points. And I always love, answering. So I'm very easy to DM or to email or however you want to reach me.
Amazing. Thanks, Tammy, for your time. I so appreciate you sharing your knowledge and your story. It's been really fun.
Well, thank you, Larissa. I really appreciate this opportunity to speak with you. I find you very impressive. I went to all of your lectures at Conclave, and I was like, wow, she knows what she's doing. And I'm really honored that you had me on, and I really appreciate it.
Aw, thanks. I appreciate that. What did you think of Tammy? To learn more about her and her brand consulting services, visit tcbrandconsulting.com. You can also always email me, Larissa, that's LARYSSA at joyjoya.com. If you love this podcast, please share it with a friend who'd appreciate it. And don't forget to subscribe as well as leave a review on Apple Podcasts. To purchase a signed copy of my book, Jewelry Marketing Joy, visit joyjoya.com/book for more information.